want to thank you all for coming. Okay, first we want to thank our sponsors, Exelon and Russell Realty. Mr. Bowen, he has his big ad in the Chelsea Record every week, so that's who sponsored us. We have an exceptional speaker and a timely topic. The only thing I'm going to do is mention we now have a new benefit, doesn't cost anything, a new benefit for the Chelsea Chamber members. You're going to have the opportunity to speak for 30 minutes before a camera on cable TV. And the people in this room will be the first individuals to hear about it and also tell me, and we'll start to line up the appointments. Don't bother Rich. Rich has enough on his plate. Just call me, and you know what my phone number is. You know how to get me. I guess.
So what's your phone number?
My phone number, you want to get me, it's simply 877 against Joe. But if you want to call me and get me quicker, just go 884-0001. 884-0001. Now don't call 887 because you're going to get neighbor across the hall or across the street. And I don't think Barry Berman will like those phone calls. So be careful. Bill, is it Bill or William?
Bill.
Bill Alpine has Maritime Academy graduate, Suffolk Law, and many, many credentials. He's also in the Propeller Club. I wasn't quite sure, living in Chelsea, whether that meant airplanes or boats.
Boats.
So he's here to give us an update and inform us of a new law in Massachusetts, 178 M?
75 now.
75 M. Further ado, Bill and his.
I'm Bob Foy with the Mass Department.
He's going to be the person you're going to ask all the questions to, as well as Bill. Thank you.
So good morning, my name is Bill Alpine. I'm the Director of the Department of Family and Medical Leave. Just want to thank Mary Ann Walsh for being a great information technology assistant this morning. We were having a little bit of technical difficulty and she's got us squared away here, so you now can see the presentation that we put together. So, as I said, I'm the director. I started in February of this year. We have about 5 employees. As many of you know, this program was established last summer, in July, as a result of the Grand Bargain. As part of the Grand Bargain, there were a couple of other items that were passed, the minimum wage law, as well as sales tax holiday. But in that legislation, Mass General Law, Chapter 175M was created, Department of Family and Medical Leave. As I said, the Grand Bargain was passed last summer. As part of that legislation, this law was passed. This law has certain effective dates to it. But the basic premise of the law is to provide wage replacement to employees of the Commonwealth who have a need for either family or medical leave. Beginning in January 2021, that's when the benefits go into effect. Beginning in January 2021, an employee can take medical leave up to 20 weeks for their own medical condition. They can also take 12 weeks, up to 12 weeks for bonding with a child. There's also a provision in the law that allows an employee to take up to 26 weeks of time off with pay for caring for a family member that's been injured in the line of duty. The second phase of the benefits takes place in July 2021, which is the remaining balance of the family leave or taking family leave for family members. So there's a structured schedule here. As many of you may have heard, the contributions were to begin on July 1. Last week, the law was amended. Those contributions will now go into effect on October 1 of this year. So there's a 3-month stay on the contribution collection. They will begin on October 1st, and the first quarter will be due on January 31st of 2020. So as I said, I've gone over the benefits, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, and 26 weeks. You cannot take more than 26 weeks in the aggregate. The benefits aspect will be taking place, as I said, in 2021. We've been focusing mainly right now on dealing with the contributions. That's been our focus insofar as getting clarification out to our constituents. We're working on putting together an RFP now for putting together the benefits program, and we hope to have that RFP out sometime this July. Who's covered under this program? Massachusetts W-2 employees are covered under this program. The only exception to that is municipalities. Municipalities have the ability to opt in if they so choose. But right now, it's all private businesses and state agencies. So if you're a W-2 employee, you are subject to this law. Some key points to that we're keying in on, and the legislation speaks to where the services are performed. So if you're performing services as an employee in the Commonwealth, you will be subject to contributions from your paycheck. So for example, if you live in Massachusetts and work in Massachusetts, you're under this program. If you live in Massachusetts and work in New Hampshire, you are not. Live in New Hampshire and work in Massachusetts, you are. There's also some correlation. Our statute references Mass General Law Chapter 151A, which is the unemployment statute. We've had a little discussion over that, reviewing that and analyzing it, and we're going to be coming out with some guidance that basically goes in line with Mass General Law 151A, the UI statute. So if you're paying UI on wages for an employee, then you will be paying here as well. So I understand UI also has prorated. If you're working in different states and you pay a certain amount for those services, then we will align ourselves with that. The exceptions under 151A, we're going to be coming out with those as well. There's about 20 exceptions. I think some come to mind: students under 18 working for a parent, railroad workers, real estate brokers. All of those exceptions under Mass General Law Chapter 151A will also apply here. It's 151A Section 6 to be specific. So the other aspect, and I brought my friend Bob Foley here from the Department of Revenue. Our program is heavily reliant on the Department of Revenue insofar as the collection of the contributions. So you file wage reporting with the Department of Revenue. You'll also be filing your contributions with us as an employer through Mass Tax Connect, which is overseen by the DOR. DOR has been a great partner in this endeavor, and we look forward to a long-term relationship there. The aspect of the law that we're having a lot of challenge with is the 1099 rule. Unlike any other program, 1099 miscellaneous employees are eligible to seek benefits from this program. So if your 1099 workforce is more than 50% of your average workforce on a calendar basis, you need to count those as employees in your workforce. If they're not, then those same individuals have the opportunity to opt in on their own. But 1099 miscellaneous, only 1099 miscellaneous employees. So if you have 10 W-2 employees and you have 7 1099s that are working for you, they're part of your workforce. And it's a rule of averages. You know, you may have 3 1099s working for you only for 3 or 4 weeks. Likely that's not going to affect you, and you'll be dealing just with your W-2 employees. We'll be coming out with some guidance on that. There's a bunch of boxes on the 1099 that may or may not be applicable. We know, for example, that box 7 will likely be, that's the net wages paid to a non-employee. The fishery is also part of that. We're working with DOR on that guidance document, and we will be coming out with something soon. So we know there may be a lot of questions. We get a lot of questions on the 1099 rule. That's why I brought Bob with me here today. So again, counting your workforce is done on a calendar basis, and it's based on averages, and you also consider your 1099s. The other aspect of this law is that there's 2 contribution rates, and we've started out with a 0.63% on wages. As a result of the delay, we've raised that to 0.75. Law of money, we have a shorter period of time to collect the revenue that we anticipated we needed for the benefits when they begin in 2021. So there are 2 contributions. There's the medical portion, which is the larger pro rata share, and there's also the family leave portion. Right now, I believe we're counting the medical portion of 0.62 and the family leave portion at 0.13. The 2 of them combined total equal 0.75. The easiest way to look at it is it's an 82.5 and a 17.5 split between medical and family. The key point there is that if you are an employer with less than 25 employees, and again factoring in 1099s, then you do not pay the medical share that's associated for the employer. So in other words, the employer pays 60% of the medical, and the employee pays 40%, and the employee can pay up to 100% on the family. These are all tricky calculations. We have a formula and a calculator on our website, and while I'm at it, mass.gov/DFML. We have contribution calculators, and we also have benefits calculators. So if you're an employee, you can go in and try to figure out what you might anticipate as benefits come January 2021. So the key point is if you have less than 25 employees, the employee conceivably is paying all or most of the contributions to this program. I say may because it's discretionary on the employer as to whether or not they want to charge anything to the employee. The law gives discretion to the employer in those certain categories. And again, this is more or less just counting your workforce. As I said, I will do it no justice by talking about a slide here. Our website, maybe we can go in later on and you can see our website if you haven't already. We have a lot of FAQs out there. We're gearing up for October 1st, and we have guidance documents. We're coming out with more. We're looking at these 3 months now as a point to regroup and get a better message what we know we need to get out there. With all of that said, we've done a lot of these sessions throughout the state. We have many more on the docket. If any of you have any other groups or associations that you would like us to speak to, we'll accommodate day or night, regionally as well. So, eligible wages, as I said, pretty much if you're a W-2 employee working in the state, you're in. 1099s, 1099 employees, the exception there is you have to live and work in the state. And again, the 1099 rule, 50% of your workforce. We're also following the unemployment statute, and we will be issuing the guidance there, as I said. We've issued guidance on a number of things, and again, we have a lot of slides here about the calculating your workforce. So Some of the key points that I'd like to make here today is that earlier in the year, we issued a workplace poster. Many of you may have already posted that in the workplace. We also issued an employee acknowledgement. The law requires that an employee sign off acknowledging that they know about this law and that they're agreeing, or at least knowing that they're subject to the contributions that the law provides. There's also a provision in the law that says even if they don't want to acknowledge, they still have to sign something. We've never been able to figure that out, but it exists. Because of the extension on to October 1st, we're going to be reissuing the poster. I think we already have it out on our website right now, and at least in English and maybe Spanish. The law requires that we put that out in about 13 languages. We hope to have the rest of those out there shortly. The acknowledgement as well, same thing. We realize that that has to be changed because of the dates. We also realize that some employers may have already had their employees sign off on those acknowledgements. So what we're going to be doing is just basically providing an addendum to that so that you don't have to go through the whole exercise. You just need to hand that to your employees. We allow for electronic submissions and dissemination of these forms. Our recommendation is follow your own company policies that you have with respect to sign off between yourself and an employee. Again, notify your employee. We recommend that you do that by September 30th. That's for the acknowledgement. When you get the poster, you can feel free to post that whenever you want. Mass Tax Connect is where you're going to go, I think, come October 1st when you go in to register. It's going to be similar, at least through the same portal that you do for registering with wages. We also now have the ability, through many questions that we've been asked, to allow employers to allow for separate contribution rates based on their workforce. So, for example, if they don't want to charge anything to management, but they do to non-management or vice versa, DOR has accommodated us with the technology to do that. One other aspect of the program that I will mention is that there's an exemption process and opt-out. If you are an employer and you have equal or better benefits than what we're offering here, then you can apply for a private plan exemption. We've received about 70 of these applications. I think we've approved about 30. They've mainly been self-insured companies that are self-insuring. The reason being is that the private plan market hasn't really caught up to this. They're waiting for our regulations to come out. By the way, those will be hopefully published by June 26th. We sent those over to the Secretary of State's office this past Friday after having public hearings on those in the month of May. So the regulations are required to be published by July 1. We think we're on track for that based on the fact that we've already filed. But again, the exemption process allows an employer to opt out. In the market right now, there aren't too many private plans. As I said, they're mainly self-insured. The reason being is that we allow for intermittent leave. Most private plans do not. We require coverage for 1099s. Private plans do not. There might be a waiting period with your short and long-term disability plans. So therefore, we're first dollar. And so there's issues that need to be ironed out. We're told by the insurance industry that they probably will be coming up with something, but they just don't have it right now. So that exemption process, it's a rolling basis. You can apply whenever you want. We'll usually give you an approval for that beginning the first quarter after it's been approved. With respect to the exemptions, because of the amount of plans or the lack of the plans that are out there, we allowed for companies initially to apply up to September 20th to seek an exemption from paying contributions beginning July 1. We're going to do the same thing. So if you have until December 20th of this year to apply for a waiver of contributions for the period beginning in October. So that's a real quick thumbnail of this program. We most of the time have these sessions more for Q&A, and that's where we feel that you know, individuals and employees get the most out of these sessions. And as I said, I brought Bob Foley here from the DOI that can probably speak to a lot of tax issues. One other issue on tax. We've been asked many a time, probably the number one question, aside from what we're getting on 1099s, is whether or not the contributions or the deductions from employees is pre and post tax. We're awaiting a ruling from IRS on that. We don't know when that will come out. We believe, through the assistance of DOI, that it's probably going to be post-tax gross wages. But the IRS has to rule on that. We're awaiting that. That also may have a direct effect on how the benefits are paid, whether they're taxable or not. So if they're post-tax, they're probably not. But again, there's a ruling there that we're waiting from the IRS that we just don't have. But we're providing at least some preliminary guidance to that. And I'm sure there's CPAs in this room that will give a great analysis as to why or why they shouldn't be pre-tax or post-tax. But you know, I, like everybody else, is awaiting that determination eagerly. So that's, I know I was a little quick.
Well, you left time for questions, and I'm sure. Roman.
Is this going to work like UI, where you have like a reserve or a bank, and over time, individual entities, their contributions may vary depending on how the extent to which their employees used or didn't use the benefit?
Yeah, we don't have a rating in there right now for employers and how they use it. Experience rating, no, it doesn't exist right now. It's a trust fund, collects money, everybody's treated the same.
I'm a CPA, so my whole issue is the 1099.
Yeah.
You know, so when you say it applies to individuals and not businesses, so when you look at 1099, a W-9, there's different categories you know, to choose from. So if somebody has a tax ID number, are they not considered a business and not an individual? If they're a single member LLC, it's disregarded. Is that individual or business?
So one piece of advice I can give you, it's not intended that LLCs, PCs, Incs, 1099 miscellaneous in those categories, they're not considered your employees.
What if you're a DBA with a tax ID number?
Quite possible. And I'm looking at it kind of analogous to, you have a reporting requirement with the Secretary of State on an annual basis. There may be others that differ with that opinion. But yeah, I am aware of a situation where you're a law firm and you're using an EIN with a DBA. That, we think, you're considered an individual. And I know DOR has a certain sole member LLC exception. We're not going to, I believe we're not going to treat that as an employee either, which may be a little contrary to DOR.
So somebody could just let the DBA just apply to the LLC and
Sure.
You had said that municipalities and school districts are exempt. Are they automatic, or they could opt in?
Right.
Are they automatically exempt, or do our governing bodies have to take a vote to exempt others?
The only thing in the statute says that they have to take a vote to opt in. It
Okay.
doesn't say that we've been asked that by a few municipalities as to whether or not they have to do anything. We're saying no. I thought maybe you're going down the road of charter schools. Charter schools is another area. I guess there's two forms of charter schools, a state and a Horace Mann, Commonwealth and Horace Mann. We think the states are in. We're not sure about the Horace Mann. We think maybe they're out. Another area that we need to provide guidance on. But as far as the municipalities, to answer your question, there's no action that they really need to do to tell us that they're not opting in.
Okay. And then in terms of the notification requirement, do school districts need to notify their employees that we are not opting in?
Again, the statute does not speak to that either. If you were to ask me, I would probably say they don't. But that's just, if that question is coming up, certainly pose it to us and we'll try to come up with something.
Well, we just don't want to not notify that,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, we're not opting in, and then we have some type of sanction against us that we didn't notify that we're
Yeah.
not opting in.
And the notification requirements are to basically inform the employees that there's this law and that they are going to be paying contributions. So if none of that is the case in the case of a municipality, I would say no, you don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
involuntary deduction or a tax? What category does it fall into?
The collection aspects, and Bob, maybe you can help me out here, but the collection aspect is governed by 62C, General Law 62C, which is a tax statute. But it's not something that you would deal with on the other end when you're doing your income tax. But employees cannot opt out. We've received that question many a time. We've also received questions that we're going to be shutting down by the end of the year. Do we have to contribute? I'm going to be retiring by the end of the year. Do I have to contribute? And the answers to all of those questions is yes, you must contribute.
So if it's a tax, that has nothing to do with pre-tax or post-tax. I mean, if it's a tax like Mass State.
Yeah, as Bill mentioned, in terms of DOR, we, under 62C, we treat it as a tax. In the statute, it's referred to as a contribution. But for all intents and purposes, we have to treat it as a tax in order to, you know, use all our powers to collect, et cetera. So that was an amendment that went into the original law, 175N, and that was to allow us to do all the collections, et cetera, that we weren't, DOR was not specifically mentioned in the original legislation. So from our perspective, we do treat it as a tax.
What is the assumption rate on the trust based on dollars coming in?
It's about 1.2 billion.
No, what I mean is, what percentage are you calculating that you're going to earn each year on monies coming in?
We haven't, as far as the interest?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we haven't, we're setting that up with the treasurer's office right now, and we haven't really get into the details there yet. I'm not sure as far as interest and investments, how that's gonna play out.
Well, that would also downstream there,
Yep.
is that possible? I mean, if there's a lot more anticipation or a lot more use,
Yeah.
and less anticipation, employees are going to see increases in the rate.
Right, and we do have the ability to adjust the rate every October, based on the monies that's been paid out, and then we have to keep 140% of what we paid out for the following year. And I guess one of the key points that I failed to mention was employees can receive up to $850 a week. So if you're an employee that's making about $67,000 right now, the way the math works, that's the maximum of $850 per week. There's also correlations with our program if you have other forms of benefits, short and long-term disability. There's offsetting capabilities if we are informed that you have a workers' comp claim or unemployment. But $850 a week right now is the maximum. That adjusts as well with the average weekly wage, which is prescribed by Department of Unemployment and Assistance every year. There was a question over here.
It looks like it's, there is a cap on wages. It looks like it matches. Is there a cap on wages that matches to the Social Security?
Yes,
limit?
right, thank you. 132.9 is this year's current SSI cap. So if you're an employee making that amount, then you don't get, you're not responsible for contributions or deductions after that amount.
Any other questions?
There's already a policy in place for maternity leave. How would that play out?
Bill, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, she said that there's already a policy in place with an employer for maternity leave. How will that play here? The leaves are intended to run concurrently. So if you have a 4-week leave policy with your employer, that's 4 weeks that we count. So if you're entitled to 12, you're only going to get 8 in that case. So if and if your employer happens to pay greater benefits for those 4 weeks, then we will take that into consideration as well, as far as whether or not it exceeds your average weekly wage. But the leave periods themselves are intended to run concurrently, so that you're not getting 16 weeks as opposed to the 12 that we allow. Right?
So the employee puts in for this benefit with the state, not with the employer, right?
Correct.
And then if you're paying leave as an employer while they're receiving the benefit as well, just if they're getting too much or whatever, the state works that out. You just pay your benefit the way you always do, and then the state.
Right. So if the employer has a leave policy, a family or medical leave policy, we will look at that. They may be entitled to reimbursement from us, the employer, as long as it's, not more than what we would be obligated to pay anyways. In those situations, we would be saying to the employer and the employee, we need to know whether or not we would have paid on these benefits, so we need to see the claim as if they were filing with us so that we can do the adjustments. May not be dollar for dollar what the employer paid, but the employer may be in those cases entitled to come back. If the employee is using, say, vacation time while they're taking this leave because it's more generous, the employee cannot come to us for leave benefits, and it will also count towards the timeline.
And all those calculations take place passively, or does the employer have to say, by the way?
Employer's not involved with this process in that aspect. So the way the process works, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I know I skimmed over a lot of different things. We're working out the benefits aspect right now, but it's intended to work as follows. The employee should, in the perfect case scenario, notify the employer within 30 days of their desired intention to take leave. At some point, they notify us. At some point, we're looking at the claim for benefits. We're bringing in the employer into the equation to determine, among other things, whether or not they've been working for the employer for the requisite time. Right now, there's a $4,700 minimum wage requirement to be eligible for benefits. DOR is going to be tracking all of that by Social Security number, so if you have multiple employers during a year, we should be able to at least see that you've met the wage requirement. At that point, the employer is just basically sitting back and waiting for a determination from us. Once we render the determination, we'll say the amount of weeks, the amount of the benefit, that will go notification-wise to the employer as well. This law allows for both reduced leave and intermittent leave. That is going to be a challenge for not only us, but also the employers as to how we actually set up payment. I think right now the minimum intermittent leave requirement under our regulations is an hour, but we were thinking about making it 4. I'm not sure how we landed. So if that's the case, if an employee takes an hour here and an hour there, we're going to have to set up something that maybe the employer pays the employee for that, and then we reimburse the employer on a set schedule. Maybe that the employee applies directly with some type of joint payroll time receipt with the employer so that everybody is understanding what's going on. Again, these things in the law that we're trying to figure out and establish policies for.
Is there going to be a mechanism for reporting abuse? You mentioned intermittent leave, and that's a right ground for abuse of FMLA. So.
Yeah, we're setting up a whole program, and we will probably have a hotline of some sort. What employers don't, or maybe they do know and they're not necessarily happy with, they don't really have the ability to interject into the equation and say this employee cannot receive benefits because whatever that may be. We have to look at it. If it's a medical claim, it's a medical provider that's providing us the documentation. We're going to give deference to that. We have very little latitude on how far we can expand our breadth of review.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I'll go with real life experience. Patient has a real COPD diagnosis that qualifies you for medical leave.
Yep.
And then their buddy says, hey, I got a great construction project, pay you cash for 4 weeks. I need time off, and they get that job on the side. And you find out, Facebook posts, all kinds of ways people are stupid about it, that they were working while on leave. On medical, how do you report that?
We're gonna have a QA/QC process, we're gonna have an audit process, we're gonna, we're gonna take all of that into consideration, and, we're gonna be looking to our UI and workers' comp, sister agencies for any guidance that they can provide as well. And we're also, we'll take any advice, that anybody wants to provide us. We may have a hotline, we may have, we probably have some type of email inquiry system. But yeah, we realize, that's been raised throughout our sessions, and, we're aware of it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Guys?
I read it would go up to 26 weeks, right?
Sorry?
I read that this lasts up to 26 weeks.
Yeah, combined leave is 26 weeks. If you have a military family member, it could be 26 weeks. If you could have 12 weeks of family and 8 weeks of medical, or vice versa. It's a maximum of 20 weeks in a calendar in a benefit year.
And they accrue vacation the whole time you're out.
We've addressed that in the regulations to basically say to be consistent with company policy, so that if you are allowed to accrue leave while on leave, then so be it. If not, then we've addressed that in the regulations.
All right, so I confess, I feel like I was at my 8 a.m. lecture at BC. But I want to thank you for coming out and discussing a difficult topic. It's not the sexiest topic, but it's super timely and super...
Well, you were awake at least at 8 o'clock, right?
Here I was. I don't know what my BC professors would say. So thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to hold on for a couple of minutes and pull a raffle ticket for us. If anyone else would like to get a raffle ticket, we're raffling off a $175 ticket to the Chamber's Pot of Gold, $10,000 Pot of Gold dinner and drawing. So if you still need to get a ticket, please raise your hand, and I'll send Freddie around as he's trying to eat his. Oh, you have Roman, okay. In the meantime, a couple of announcements. First, I want to introduce a new member and say extra thank you to Marinelle Wall from Infranet Solutions. So Marinelle was here early, which is great. And when we plugged my tablet into the TV, my tablet wanted to do updates, which it did until 7:56 when it finally decided it was finished. So if you saw me sweating, that was one of the reasons, and she was very helpful in that. So if you are part of a company that does not have an internal IT department and you would like to offload your technology woes to experienced people, please give Marinelle a call. So thank you very much for that. The other thing is, between the Chamber Foundation, which was established last year, we've been very busy writing grant applications. I left the office at 9 o'clock last night, and some of the people in this room were still there when I left. So if anybody fell asleep on your shoulder, I hope you just let them have the nap that they deserve. One of the grants that we've been working on, we've been doing a number of applications either through the Chamber or the Foundation independently or with the Chelsea Technology Development Initiative Partnership, which we just call the Chelsea TDI Partnership. And one of those grants is a crowdfunding grant. It's a patronicity grant through Mass Development. If you remember Green Roots' project last summer, where they painted the murals in the Chelsea Walk, we're working on one now, and of course this is going to sleep. We're working on one now to kind of pick up where that left off. And right now you go through Chelsea Walk, you see the beautiful murals. If you're a visitor to the city, you're like, hey, what's down here? And then you get to the end of Chelsea Walk and you're like, this is a gritty, gray, depressing parking lot. So recently the city of Chelsea had a very successful first Chelsea night market in Luther Place. And that's the site of, why won't this turn on? Marinelle?
I think I did that.
That's the site of the project that the Chelsea TDI Partnership is working on right now. And so it's a crowd. It's a crowd funding project. If we raise $15,000, then Mass Development is going to match us $15,000. It's a dollar for dollar match. We're at about 2/3 of the way there, and we have 11 days to go. What I was hoping to show you was a video that was made for our project. Essentially, the idea is to bring some mural treatments to the walls in Luther Place. We're looking at installing some shade sails. Basically, Luther Place is surrounded by buildings on all sides, and it's a cauldron in the summer. So when you have a hot July or August day, and you want to have a special event in that space at night, the tarmac is still radiating up the heat from the day. We're looking at painting a soccer/basketball court into the parking spaces. So let's say it's a Sunday and we want to have a soccer tournament or a basketball tournament as a special event. We'd be able to do things like that. I have the feeling we're not going to watch the video, but I encourage you to go to www.patronicity.com. There's a function there, the / Shades of Chelsea is the URL, but you can also just search by the Chelsea zip code 02150, and it will pop up. You can watch the project video there, you can read more about the project, look at some project renderings, and most importantly, you can click to contribute, which we would appreciate very much. I think that's the last thing. Did Roman get his ticket?
Yes, he's on it.
Roman got his
Any
ticket?
more tickets? Any more tickets?
All right, I think that's it. So the other thing would be to mark the calendar for our government breakfast. This is our last event before the summer break. It's just a break in events. It's not a break in work. September 18th, Wednesday, September 18th will be the government breakfast. And Knottwood, as of right now, our speaker is going to be Attorney General Maura Healey, whom we've been trying to get to come speak for us in Chelsea for since I've been here, so 5 years. Thank you. And we just want to thank City Councilor Leo Robinson for being here, City Manager Tom Ambrosino, and I didn't see any. Is there anybody else I'm missing from our
Everybody in the room.
Actually, yeah.
Thank you for coming. And
you didn't miss your 8 a.m. class on a Wednesday, so thank you very much.
And the winner is 3, 7, 9, 1, 0, 5.
Yes, it is.
No way.
Okay. So our pot of gold.
The other thing, as I mentioned before, what we're trying to do is help Mr. Cuffey. He's involved in a lot of things. If you have any questions, 617-884-0001 or joe@getsjoe.com. If you have ideas of how we can expand the city and make it a greater city, I'd appreciate it, because what I learned is you people have a lot of great ideas. Just bring them forward. So I'd appreciate it. If you have any ideas, that's Joe.
And the last thing, we just want to present our speaker, Bill, with a gift card for the Chelsea Station Restaurant, so he can come back when he's not working, but he can come back when it's not 7:30 in the morning and enjoy a visit to Chelsea. So thank you all very much. We'll see you soon.
The other thing is, we have to thank Mr. Foley for coming. He didn't have any questions, but we thank him for coming as well. Have a great day.